So what happened is I started studying based off like what I was struggling with the past 1.5 years, and which for me was microbiology and renal. So I spent the winter break kind of like focusing on those two because I know that they're going to be a problem when dedicated comes around. Step one dedicated comes around. So I started with those first, and basically winter break is not that much time, but it's like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I think. So I spent those 2.5 weeks kind of like brushing through micro, renal, kind of like familiarizing myself with things that I've already seen the past semester, and kind of like seeing where I was lacking, spending time doing some questions. And during this time I was doing like ambush questions. I hadn't started my U word yet. I was saving it for like the real dedicated time for step one. So I was doing just Amboss and then watching like Boss and Beyond videos to kind of like fill in the gaps of places that I was struggling with. And for like micro specifically, I was using Sketchy, which I found very helpful to kind of like, memorize a lot of the small details that you needed to know for step one. And then when January came around, started the semester. I was still studying a little bit for step one, but it wasn't like intense. More of like, doing like 5 to 10 questions a day when I do have time. But it was really relaxed, just getting a feel of what the step questions look like, and then doing as much as I can. And then for us, dedicated usually starts around like April, if I remember correctly. So like that's when I started like my intensive studying. So like and the day for my first step one was early June. So I had like April, May, and pretty much, and then I wrote the exams like the first week of June. So it was more of like, I have 2 months to cover as much as possible. And I guess my goal was to learn as much as possible, but also retaining what I already knew. Because I feel like that's the biggest part of studying for step one. You'll feel like you have to learn all these new things, and then the next thing you know, the things that you knew before, you're forgetting them because you haven't been reviewing them because you've been focusing a lot of energy on the new stuff that you want to learn. So I feel like the goal for me during dedicated was learn as much new stuff as I can, but also retaining what I already know, which is by doing questions. Like let's say I studied microbiology the winter break. So like doing questions during this time to kind of like solidify what I already learned for micro and renal and not forgetting those as well. And so basically that's pretty much what I did. And then for the other blocks, like GI, cardio, whatever the rest were, I was just doing it during dedicated and doing as much questions. And I think if I am to give anybody advice about step one, is do as many questions as you can. Like finish your word and restart it if you can. Like honestly, like the more questions you're able to see, the better. I feel like it correlates better to how you do. And I started with Ambers, kind of like did basically since M1 year I was doing Ambers like kind of steady for classes and stuff. And then second year, spring semester of second year, I was focusing just on UWorld basically, and just doing UWorld as much questions as I can. And I finished all of UWorld like around like early May, and then I restarted it, and then basically ramped it up again. So like basically that's like what I did, and I know there's a lot of details that I left out. If you have any specific questions, then I can dive in. But like this, pretty much like this, I guess an overview of what I did.
So, Bernard and I go to the same school, so our curriculum is relatively similar. I started studying during spring break, so around March, mid-March of second year. And personally, like thinking back, actually I started relatively earlier. Um, when I started doing more so AMBOSS. I just got an AMBOSS. I was doing more so AMBOSS. I too was like leaving UWorld until like more so during dedicated when I was having like when I had full days of studying to do those questions then. Looking back, I would have started doing those questions earlier and focus on those questions and like reviewed it more. I went through Pathoma during the March start date. I was going through Pathoma, Boards and Beyond, Sketchy, watching those videos and like reviewing those topics that I struggled with during the first 2 years of medical school. Um, and then like when Dedicated started, it started in like late May. That's when I started doing more UWorld questions. I would do about 2 to 3 blocks a day. And I would review each block. I would use Anki. Anki has this feature whereby you can like create decks based on the questions you had just done. So I would use that to review the questions I had just done. Um, about your world, I think I went through it once, and looking back, I would have gone through it twice too, whereby the first time I would have focused, I would have done questions based on systems, and then later on the second time around do it randomized. However, I didn't do that, and it was like a mistake that I need to correct um mid studies. Overall, I think that it's good to like find a study method that works for you initially and stick with it throughout the whole process, because the hardest thing for me was finding a study method that I could stick with that will give me the progress I need to see to get the grades I needed. Overall, it was an experience. It was challenging emotionally, physically, mentally. Um, but it is doable. And at the end of the day, every doctor has done it, so you can do it too.
All right. First of all, shout out to the two previous panelists. They almost said everything. But I guess I'll also add my 2 cents. So I go to a school that has a 1 year preclinical curriculum. And so my studying looked a bit different. Um, I went in not even thinking about stuff, but I think I was talking to some upperclassmen and they shared with me that, since we're studying the basic science, I guess in 1 year, maybe there's an opportunity where after the first year you can consider taking a step. And that is if you're prepared. Now it's going to take a lot of effort, of course, because you have to also pass the classes. And so I started off with a mindset that, I'm not really going to try too hard to kind of study step relevant material. Um, Unless I feel like studying is going away where it's like, okay, I can kind of do both, or I guess like, prepare while also studying for classes. And so when I started, my mindset was, okay, learn as much information as I can from the third party resources. And so my goal was to just touch base with the third party resources, also look at class stuff so I can ready for class exams. Because like usually the questions that we don't have like MBA exams. So the questions we have in our exams are a bit different compared to step relevant material. So I started out, you know, doing some Anki, right? My basically my study method was, I go to the primary content, all right? And then after the primary content, I do, Anki, and then I do some questions. So let's say, I don't know, chapter 1 of biochemistry, the relevant information. Usually I use Boards and Beyond, especially for the first semester, Boards and Beyond. And then I go to the relevant Anki cards. I do those Anki cards, right? And then I move over to questions. Questions sometimes for first semester, when I started studying was a bit sparingly. So I wasn't doing as much, but I probably in retrospect should have done more. And then after that, I go to my class lectures, so I make sure I'm ready for class. So that was the method I kind of used, and I try to keep up with the Anki cards also throughout the semester. But it came to some times where I just couldn't. So over I think the fall break, I kind of suspended a lot of the cards because they were just too much for me to review. But basically and also I would say in the middle of the semester in fall, I had a strong inclination I was going to take step by the end of the first year. So I was like, okay, let me just kind of ramp it up, do some more third party material, focus less on class relevant material. And I feel like I was lucky in that sense because our curriculum has failed. So all you have to do is to get 70 average throughout the year. And also on a particular exam, you only have to get 60%. So long as you're averaging 70, you're fine. And it's no problem at all. And so I wasn't too worried about class grades. So I kind of speed time away from class, level material, and then focus on that more. I try to focus on high yield material. But I definitely you're gonna miss some things, especially with biochem. I think step material relevant for biochem is like way more extensive than what I did in class. And so on the back end, I had to kind of study more. But so that was first semester basically, right? Second semester, same approach, but more heavy on third party material. Okay. So I think the fall I started doing like some boot camp questions for anatomy and stuff. Then I did some RX USMLE. I didn't do a lot of it to be fair, but I did a good chunk. And then I also started some AMOS. And so basically, second semester, almost everything I used, almost everything I saw was third party material because the overlap between third party material and my class exams was I'll say about 80%, 80%. And so again, same method, go to boards and beyond, right? And for pathology, you do a lot of pathoma. Pathoma really teaches you how to think and how to understand concepts. And so I did some boards and beyond, some pathoma. I did a lot of sketchy. I would say maybe 90% of the sketchy videos. They were very, very helpful, super high yield. So pathoma, boards and beyond, did some sketchy as well. Did my Anki, try to keep up with it. Again, I wasn't faithful because sometimes things just, it was a lot. And then I did some AMOS. I didn't start UART early, which I feel like, depending on the curriculum and what you have going on in life, might be better to start it earlier, in my opinion. Because I started, I think I think around May or actually April. And I feel like that was the reason why I couldn't finish it because again, I had other things going on in class, life stuff. So doing 2 question banks is kind of tough. And especially if you're still studying the material fresh. And so I would definitely say start it earlier than you think you're gonna need it, in my opinion. And so we did all that. At the end of the first semester, we took the practice MBME. And I did well enough to the point where I was like, okay, I think if I take a few weeks after first year to kind of do a dedicated essay for the exam, I should be fine. Which again, you can plan, but sometimes it doesn't go to plan at all. And that's what happened. And so I had to take 1 extra week into the second year to kind of study some more and make sure my practice course was, kind of hitting the benchmarks I was looking for and my school were looking for. So the whole time we have like a resource person that we kind of touch base with. And I'm pretty sure like almost everyone in school has that. So I was kind of working with them, going back and forth. I was sending them my practice scores. Okay, what are we missing? And they just go back and forth with me. And so I use that as a great resource to kind of adjust my study and see what I was supposed to be focusing on. So that's a brief overview of what I went through. Basically, first year, class material, a little bit of material, the regular boards material, like both and beyond, some Anki, some questions. Second semester, a lot of therapy material, both and beyond, pathoma, sketchy. I also did some physics as well, but I can talk about that briefly. I didn't do as much. It's very helpful, but it was too expensive for my pocket, so I kind of stopped. And then UART at the later end, I didn't get through a lot of, well, compared to like the average student, probably should have done more UART, but I also had done AMBOSS previously. And so I felt like, do the best you can with what you have. And so definitely I would advise people to do more UART. And I kind of saw the lack of UART in my practice exams. It really showed itself, and I had to do a lot of work on the back end to kind of cover up. But that's a brief overview, and I'm happy to answer any specifics.
All right, thank you. So the next question kind of bleeds into some of the answers that y'all gave. The next question touches on what resources you used and which ones are worth it. I do kind of agree in a lot of the stuff that you guys said, start early. I also wanted to ask about, because 2 of our panelists mentioned MBOSS, how beneficial is it to incorporate MBOSS into your studying?
Overall, I say it's nice to have. It's nice to use, but I would focus more so on UWorld than AMBOSS. Personally, I found that questions on AMBOSS a bit more challenging than UWorld. And it was relatively harder to review than UWorld because for most of the answers or so, it went more in depth. Like AMBOSS has the question-based section and the knowledge-based section. So if you can afford it, get it. But I think with only UWorld, you will be able to accomplish whatever you need to accomplish, regardless of what Ambos. It offers something, but I don't think it offers as much as UWorld as of now.
So the resources, I kind of stated a bit of them. For primary material, kind of understanding content or learning content for the first time, a lot of Boards and Beyond, definitely. It's more like a outline type of resource. It doesn't really explain to detail. Rarely he does explain stuff. So take that with a grain of salt. So definitely Boards and Beyond. And this is for, I guess, like for normal physiology. And then UWorld. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, Boards and Beyond and UWorld. I would say I use those two. For second semester, which is a pathology, disease, all that type of stuff, definitely Boards and Beyond again. A lot of Pathoma, a lot of Sketchy. Those are the three big resources I used. Also, first semester, actually going back, bootcamp, when I started med school, had this free subscription where you get 1 free year. That was very, very helpful. I use that a lot, especially to kind of go through some genetics questions, some concepts not making too much sense. I go and do their little quizzes and stuff. I would say it's not necessary, but since it was free, I used it. And so that's why I kind of mentioned it. More resources, I would say Physio has some very good physiology videos and there's some good pathology videos. I still don't think it's absolutely necessary because you have to pay for that. Our school, we have I'm kind of cinching myself, but we have a hard drive that contains like all Boards and Beyond videos and Pathoma videos and Sketchy videos. So those were free. And so that's why I focus on those primarily. Physio has great physiology resources. They explain physiology very, very, very well. And I found a lot of helpfulness using their resources. But I'd say if finance is a bit tight, which is the case for most medical students, I would say don't even touch it at all. And I think you should be fine. Unless you find it for free, then please use it. Or use it for topics that you find more challenging. Also, going back to first semester, I also used Costanzo. It's a physiology textbook. That was also free. I think I was having trouble understanding some concepts and cardiology concepts, and so I used that to kind of supplement my learning. And I used USMLE RX again. That was not necessary, I feel like, but my idea was I want to save UWorld for the end, which was a mistake again because you don't have a lot of time. So I would say that I agree with what Stephanie said. I'll say if you have a shorter preclinical curriculum, I'll focus on UWorld and try to get UWorld done, and even potentially, hopefully, do it twice if you can. Ambos was helpful. I would say that it was helpful. Maybe not as helpful as UWorld, because UWorld's questions I feel like are more similar to the NBNEs. Ambos really is on the difficult side, but I found it to be helpful too. I did that at the beginning of the second semester a little bit here and there. Nothing too crazy. I found it helpful. I would say it's not necessary. If you have a 2-year preclinical, I would say you probably will come to a point where you need a lot of questions if you're doing a lot of questions every day. Now, so with the first year, I guess you could maybe kind of do UWorld and Ambos, and then the second year you can focus more on UWorld. So if you have a longer preclinical, consider adding Ambos, but it's actually not necessary. If you have a shorter preclinical, I'll say UWorld is your best bet. And I think that is all for the resources I used.
So for the resources that I used, just like I mentioned, Ambos, I started that a little bit earlier. And then Ambos is harder. I'll put it that way. It's harder in every way possible. The content, the type of questions they ask, like they are 3-step questions, like it's harder because they're asking for extra information that you usually don't focus on when you're going through your preclinical years. So it's a little bit harder compared to UWorld. I think UWorld is more representative. I think UWorld is more representative of the real exams, actually. I know a lot of people say the free 120 that USMLE provides. Honestly, I think it was way easier than step 1. And UWorld was probably the most representative of the real exams, at least maybe the exams that I got. UWorld was more representative. And then so because we have 2 years of preclinical, I started doing Ambos like the start of I guess the summer of after my first semester, after my first year. So that's when I started doing Ambos. That's why I was able to go to Ambos. And then getting closer, I started like the spring semester, I started focusing more on UWorld because I mean I wanted to get through it fast. and then restart it as soon as possible. So Ambos, UWord for questioning, and then for like studying, I used Boss and Beyond primarily, but Patoma, I was using Patoma during the semesters. So like I didn't really go back and watch all of Patoma again because I was already using it to study during like first year and half of second year. So like I didn't go back to kind of like watch all of Patoma again because I already did that during the semesters, the past semesters. So basically if I needed to review anything, I usually just go to Boss and Beyond, then maybe like maybe I'm getting like a couple of cardio questions wrong, like specific cardio questions, like maybe MI questions, then I'll go to Boss and Beyond, watch the videos on those, and then kind of like refresh my mind. And then that's pretty much. So like I basically use the questions to direct how I study. Like I don't study to do questions. I do questions to know where I'm lacking, and then I watch the videos for those. I know it's kind of like backwards, but that's what I did, and it worked perfectly. I did as many questions as I can. Then if I see like a pattern on the type of questions I was getting wrong, then I usually just go back, watch the videos, kind of like fill in that gap, and then kind of like start again, doing questions, then go back. I know it's pretty backwards, but it worked out pretty well. And that's pretty much the resources I use. And Sketchy for Michael. That's Boss and Beyond is nice, but if you want to get micro down pat, man, Sketchy is your friend. Don't it looks like cartoons, trust me, but it works. It works. It actually makes you remember a lot of stuff because you'll be sitting behind a step one during the exams and you remember this weird looking cartoon that you saw or weird looking character that you saw in one of the sketchy videos, and then you get a question right. I know it sounds crazy, but it actually worked. And then for Patoma is great, but the only thing I have to say about Patoma is don't use it during dedicated because Patoma is teaching you how to think. And during dedicated, you don't want to be thinking. You want to be doing as many questions as you can. Like dedicated is not the time of learning a lot of new material. Dedicated is the time of learning how to actually take the exams. Because mind you or not, that step one is not just knowing the content, it's actually knowing the tricks that is in the exams. Because sometimes things might look very obvious to you that you think is one answer, but then there's a trick somewhere in the question that makes that one answer that you think is right wrong. And I know it's something that you learn the more you do questions and the more like questions you're exposed to. So I mean, Patoma is great for like actually learning during your preclinical years. And then if you want to review anything, maybe you watch it again, but it's not like I wouldn't advise using it during like dedicated time where you're supposed to be doing a lot of questions. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did.
Okay, so I have a quick comment. So with the Amboss, going back to that, one good thing about Amboss was that you can like look up topics, specific subjects and topics, and do questions on them. So if you're learning a certain topic or so, if you're going through a certain pathway, you could like look up only questions on those and work on them and review them. So it enabled you to like solidify the information you're just like learned. Apart from that, when in March or so, I came out with a new feature whereby if you were going through an Anki deck or so on OnKing, you could create questions based on the deck you had just gone through. So much like what you wrote, it was relatively like the opposite of what you wrote, what you could do with it, whereby you can like copy the tags of questions and review those 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 cards post taking the test or doing the questions. You could like you could do a deck you can review an Anki deck and afterwards do questions based on what you had just learned. So I thought that was a bit helpful. Apart from that, personally, other resources I use, which were invaluable, the first aid book overall is really great to use. I know we're talking about the Pathomas, the Boards and Beyond Sketchy, but the first aid book, I always had it open. That was my reference source whenever I need to like review something quickly and like learn about it. Because as Bernard said, yes, the Dedicated is used to like actually learn how to take the exam, but sometimes you just forget and you need to go back and relearn something. So like the first aid book is wonderful to use. Have it open. Another resource I used, which was free, was Melman Medical. And with Melman, you could, one thing I'll do is I downloaded all the different slides he had. And whenever I did a question I didn't understand, I'll just search up the term and then I'll look up every kind of question that came up that was similar to the one that I had just gotten wrong I was reviewing. So I think Melman was really helpful. Apart from that, there are like the Dirty Medicine on YouTube and there's this doctor called like Rahul the Mania or something on YouTube. And he had like a bunch of high yield videos whereby for an hour and 30 minutes, you go through a whole topic, maybe like the high yield and cardio. So I think that person was really helpful for me to see everything in one spot and review it quickly right before I did questions sometimes in those subject areas. What else was helpful? I think overall, those are some of the major stuff I used. There are a lot of resources. You can go on Reddit and like I think I went on Reddit at one time. I found like NBMEs from like the previous NBMEs which were no longer on the site. And they were helpful to like just quickly review, especially depending on how long your dedicated is. You may exhaust all your NBMEs. So like just take those exams and mark it yourself. Apart from that, going to the NBMEs during like the first week of dedicated or so, they came up with this new feature whereby all the questions you had like done, you could go to the website and filter it. So depending on like and filter those you got it wrong, those you got it right. So one thing I'll do is that I'll go to NBME, I'll filter it and like look up a certain section that I've gotten wrong. I knew that I was struggling with. I'll go through the kind of questions I was getting wrong. By doing so, I was able to like focus my reviews and my studies just to like make sure that I was using my time, utilizing my time properly to master those topics I struggled with. But I didn't I didn't realize I was struggling with. I thought it was like once in a blue moon, but I realized that I was always getting those questions wrong. Overall, I personally took all the NBMEs and they were helpful because by the time I finished, I could definitely see a difference in the way my thought process, in the way I was seeing questions. Overall, yeah, it's an exam based on strategy. It's good to have, one thing I would suggest is that it's always good to have somebody who's gone through it or who knows the exam to help you go through it sometimes when you're struggling, because sometimes you may not know what you don't know until somebody points it out to you. Fortunately, I had somebody like that with me, and sometimes we just sit down and go through questions that I got wrong, and like we'll explain it to each other, and also it helps to explain it to each other. That's I suggest having like study groups. It's something you can do alone, and it's sometimes good to do alone because you don't want to compare yourself to others, but also having study groups whereby you can sit together and study and ask questions and bounce ideas off each other is also really helpful.
Thank you. It looks like Mami Amor Dunkwa had a question.
It was not a question. I just wanted to add something to what everyone was saying. Hi, everyone. My name is Mami. I know it's random. But I just wanted to put a plug for Pathoma because I just came out of Dedicated, and the first 3 chapters of Pathoma, like if you not read all of Pathoma, just like those first 3 chapters, it will help your general principle score go from like the trunk, like the trenches, to like the mountains. Like those first 3 chapters, like review it as much as you can, because like I feel like there's like, I don't know, maybe everyone goes back and review like immunology and stuff, but it's really simple to like ignore that, and like you're like, oh, why is my score not going where it's supposed to go? Like just those first 3 chapters are gold, and I think like you should read them over and over again before your step. And I can or cannot say what came on my step, but I would say that there were questions from those first 3 chapters, so definitely read them. And I would also say, I think someone else is saying first aid, which is like awesome, but just like those small like mnemonics that they have on the side about like which hypothalamic like nuclei had stuff. Awesome, because you're gonna remember it in the middle of your exam and it's gonna be great. But yeah, I just wanted to add a pause.
Desperately wanted revenge, but he knew he had to tread carefully.
All right, thank you for adding that. So I guess to kind of summarize, a lot of people do use UWorld, which is, I mean, you have to use UWorld. A lot of people use Sketchy for microbiology. It's very helpful. Pathoma, I have heard that Pathoma helps, especially the first 3 chapters really does help you. MBOS as well. Personally, I didn't use MBOS, but I did hear a lot of people talk about how great it is as a resource. First aid, completely amazing. I use Anki, and it has a lot of like all the other resources kind of in it. So just like Stephanie was saying, if you take like if you do questions, you can kind of do this wizardry where all the questions that you did, there's Anki that's specifically tied into the ID of the questions in UWorld, so you can do those. So I actually hated reviewing my questions, so that's how I reviewed it, because it has everything. So it felt like I was kind of beating the system. I don't know. But there's Melman PDFs, Dirty Medicine. A lot of people swear by it. I used it a lot, especially for biochemistry, genetics as well. There's also Divine Interventional, which for me, that really helped with step 1 and 2. So there's a lot of resources out there. The next thing we're going to talk about is which ones are free. I know we talked about which ones were worth our time, which is, you know, the ones that I just mentioned, but which ones are free and how do we access it?
For me at least, Boards and Beyond was free, Sketch was free, but Pathoma was also free. Reach out to somebody, you know, who can help you get access to those. Those were free for me at least. Bootcamp was also free because it was on this promotion where you get 1 year free subscription. Physio, I paid for a couple of months and I stopped because I just felt like Boards and Beyond and Pathoma was enough, and some YouTube videos were also enough. What else? USMLE RX also I bought for a couple of months too, but I stopped that because UWorld was, I guess, more important to do. MBOS, I also started. When my subscription ran out, I didn't restart it again. But there's this MBOS feature. If you an Anki person, there's this feature where MBOS actually highlights different terms in Anki for you, and when you kind of hover over those like highlighted terms, it kind of gives you like a brief explanation, and it kind of tells you what basically I guess the concept is about. So let's say you're doing a question and HLH comes up, right? You're gonna see like some small like highlight under HLH, and when you hover over it, it's gonna explain HLH to you. So it's kind of helpful when you're doing Anki cards and you kind of need some context as to what those Anki cards meant. That was $10 a month, and with that $10 a month, you can also get 50 questions per month. So I use that Anki feature a lot. I still have it on my computer right now. And so I wanted to add that. But that was also $10 a month, which again, you don't necessarily need it because you can literally look it up on Google yourself. But it makes things easier if you find it helpful. And I think that was it. Physio also I paid for a couple of months, I said. And Melman was free. Everything else everybody has discussed was free. So just look them up, and yeah, and you get access to them.
I guess free resources is probably just Dirty Medicine, and then Ninja Nerd. If Ninja Nerd is more of like he's teaching you everything into detail. So like it's good. It's not necessarily good for like a quick review, but like if there's like a pattern of like let's say immunology questions that you keep getting wrong, and then you can't figure out why you're getting them wrong, and you want to relearn it. I think Ninja Nerds has like great videos for that. And then it's not like quick review per se, but it gets the job done. Probably spend like 1 hour, but 2 times speed it, you get through it very fast. And then Dirty Medicine is quick, straight to the point. No no beating around the bush or anything like that. Just straight to the point, tells you what you need to know, how they're gonna trick you, and then you just get that information and you're out. So it's like two sides of like studying. One explains everything to details, and the other one just gives you what you need to know, and you don't even have to think for yourself that much. You just need to know the mnemonics, and usually you can get the question right. So Dirty Medicine and Ninja Nerd. And they are on YouTube, free.
And I guess at this point, we can all kind of communicate and help each other figure out, how to get the most out of studying. A lot of schools provide UWorld. A lot of people can get access to Sketchy and Pathoma. So just communicate with, each other, and we can help each other out, get all the resources you need to, further improve your score. The next question is, how did you incorporate, studying for boards into your study schedule? I know a lot of people already mentioned how they started studying for the boards. Michael went a little bit more into depth as in how he sort of balanced that, but how did studying for boards sort of impact your life? And we all go through stresses. So how did you manage to figure that out and become successful?
I think a big part of my wellness was that I wanted to pass class exams. Okay, I wasn't in for 90s. That was just not my focus because I knew that to be proficient in preparing for the STEP exam, I would have to do a lot of therapeutic material, which means that class material is going to take a backseat in a way, and which means that again, exam scores are not going to be nice. Okay, we're going to be below the average, which is totally fine. It's okay. So I feel like that long-term gratification was very, very hard, right? Because we have TBL sessions as well. So sometimes I'm studying therapy material, or my classmates already covered class material, and they're doing TBL, and then they ask the question. I'm like, I don't know. That's tough. You see, that's tough to be in that situation consistently. So it's definitely not for everybody. But I would say if you're able to build that long-term gratification, take the L's when you can so you can celebrate the W later. I would definitely recommend it. But it was tough. It was definitely tough. And also in terms of time intense, I took like my studying actually went into my summer break, so which was a huge sacrifice because after 1 year we have like 1 month off before start second year, and so you really kind of need to take that summer off just to kind of decompress. But because the program said I took that upon myself, I had to sacrifice 1 more week because things were not going as I had planned, so I needed more extra time to study. Overall, I'd say it was tough. I couldn't really hang out too much in the spring. My classmates felt like I deserved them a little bit, which maybe was true. But you have those strains in your social relationships. And frankly, when I got some bad exam scores, I was like, oh my gosh, it really sometimes it can get to you. It's like the MCAT all over again. And so those things are hard. I would definitely say lean on people who have been placed by your school system to kind of help you out. We had a resource person, and she's a psychology PhD, very, very very, very helpful when it comes to like study methods and just basically needing somebody to talk to and support. So I went to her a lot. Her name was Dr. Bona. She's very great. Also, we had a resource person, an upperclassman, very, very smart guy. He also kind of talked me through the process, helped me out when things were not going right. I think one time I had a bad exam, and then we went through like 20 or about 10, 20 questions, and he was just explaining things to me and things I felt like I should look at. And also, my family was a huge support. I call every now and then. So now and then when I get sad, I just call my mom, and I just feel better. So just lean on the people that are most close to you. Find resources, talk to upperclassmen. When things are not going well, it's okay to admit it. Okay, it's okay. You got a bad exam score. The ramifications of you not admitting that, it's way more than how you're gonna feel admitting it. So those are the key things I feel like really help me the most to go through this process.
So personally, for me, one thing is that this exam overall tested my mental fortitude because you're learning a large amount of information in a short amount of time. For the most part, you're relearning them, but it's still a hard process. And that's why I suggested having like a study group, because sometimes when you're isolated and you're like all in your head all the time, it's really hard for you to like find see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're going through the process. So sometimes other people need to like encourage you and remind you. Fortunately, there were a lot of like good people around me that I could rely on and like vent to in times of need. Similar to what Michael spoke about, our school also had like a resource person that we often like spoke to, and though like they're good to listen to, sometimes I think that it will be, sometimes those people, especially like if they've never gone through the process themselves, they know how to like mentor you through the process, but they had never taken an exam before. Their suggestions may not be as helpful as you like as you need at that moment. So often take their suggestions with a grain of salt, because everybody's journey is different, and like there's not a one size fit all process for all of us. Um, One thing is I don't lose heart during like when you take your MBA means or so, because it's really or it's really easy to like take an exam, you don't get the grade that you want, break down and cry, and like talk like give yourself all this negative talk because of like how things were panning out in the moment. However, you have to like also like remember your end goal. You have to like make sure like mentally, spiritually, and like at least mentally and spiritually and emotionally, you're relatively like stable. You're like you have a stable mind, because I said it's a mind is something that requires a lot of mental fortitude. um, you will be relatively tired. You're seeing the same information over and over and over again. Sometimes you're getting them wrong over and over and over again. So it's really easy to lose heart. But you have to like remind yourself why you're here, why you chose this field, and know that your journey is your journey. No matter how it pans out, it's your journey for a reason. Overall, like my family served as a really great support system. I have four brothers, and I'll take turn calling them individually to talk to them about my problems, because I knew that like one person couldn't take it all. Um, and when it's time to take your exam, yes, you're anxious, you're nervous, but then like you know how much you're prepared for it, you know how much you have done personally. So go ahead and take it. Don't like push back date just because you're afraid. Just go in and take the exam. What will happen. And that doesn't mean that's the end of your life or your career. So just take it day by day. Hang out with friends when you can. It's hard to do so, but if you have an evening, you can study throughout the whole day, and like for an hour or two, you can hang out with somebody and just talk through the whole process. It's nice to hang out with people who are going through it too, but it's also great to like hang out with people who aren't going through it, just so they can take your mind off of what you're doing. That's all I have for this point.
Um, I guess those two said it so beautifully. I guess I'm gonna add a little bit. So one thing that I would say is, whatever you're going through, you are not alone. You're not the only person going through it. I know it might feel like it. Sometimes you might sit behind the computer, you're learning one concept and for like hours, and you're like, I don't get it. Like I'm not understanding this, and I've spent so much time on it. You would think that always the amount of time you put into something correlates to it, how much results you see. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And I guess, and it happens to a lot of people, even though people wouldn't admit it to your face, or they will always show you the good sides of them, doing well on their MBMEs. They don't really show you the MBMEs that they did terrible on. So I guess to add to what has been said, which I think is already great already, whatever you're going through, you're not going through it alone. There's a lot of people going through what you're going through. And even though it doesn't seem like it, you might feel like you're the only person going through it. Trust me, you're not. So that's why it's always good to find your people. And, it might not be a lot of people. It might just be one person in your class. Or it might just be just two people that that actually understand what you're going through, or that have been where you are and they understand what you're going through. So like, stick to those people. They'll ground you. They'll find like you guys will get through it. Trust me. And it might not look like it. It might not look like it, but it does get better. Like people have done it. It's not impossible. It's not impossible at all. A lot of people are doctors and they've done it. So if they have done it, you can, honestly. And sometimes it feels like, wow, maybe I should give up while I'm ahead, right? Like, why not? Maybe I'm not figuring this out. Maybe I should give up. No, why should you? A lot of people went through it and they got on the other end. So why not? Why can't you? You know, so like I feel like sometimes finding those people gives you perspective too, because then you know that you're not alone in this process. You're not the only one struggling. And you need to stay away from people that always show you the good sides, because those people can be very dangerous, right? Because they are showing you the only times that they do well, and not the times that they do bad. So now the reference point you have is all the times they did good, right? So now you're comparing yourself to all the times they did good, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of times that they didn't do good. So you need to find people that actually show you the both sides of the journey, the tough times and the good times. And then you can learn from those as well. And one thing that I also found very helpful, and I think incorporating like step one studying into your local exams is very hard. Or your local stuff is very hard because nine times out of 10, your local exams has nothing to do with step one. Like they're talking about a lot of PhD stuff that you probably would never see on step one. But you need to pass that, right? You need to pass that to move on to the next step. So you just need to find a way that you can do both, even if you're doing most local like things for your local exams. At least try and incorporate step one studying just a little bit, nothing crazy, maybe one video of Boss and Beyond a day. That's like 20 minutes. So like don't overwork yourself, but also try and do something. Even if it's so small, try and do something at least. And that adds up, right? Maybe you're doing one video today. In a month, that's 30 videos, right? So like I know it doesn't look like a lot when you're doing one video a day, but in the long run, 2 months down, you've done like 60 videos. I think that's enough for you to learn something, gearing towards step one. So I'm like it's just finding your people, doing it little by little, and then always have a plan. If things are not working, ask people how they approached it. Okay, I've been doing this way. It's not working. Do you have any suggestions? Like somebody has something that would help you. And if you don't talk to people, how would you know? Because then you'll be doing the same things that you've been doing and it's not working. So now you're wasting time now. So like if it's not working, if it hasn't been working for like a couple of months, then I guess it's time for you to change it, right? And figure out another way of doing things. And sometimes it's hard to ask for help, but I'm here to tell you, you need to ask for help sometimes. It's just how it works. You might say you want to do it by yourself, but if it's getting to that point that you need to ask for help, just ask for help, honestly, and ask the right people. Because just like I said, there's some people that will show you just the good parts, and then they'll make you feel stupid. So you need to find people that are gonna be able to show you both sides and then teach you how to do it the better way. So I guess that's what I'll add to it.
To quickly say, I agree with what both Michael and Bernard have said so far. Also, like, don't feel bad or don't feel awkward when you cry. Like I think during Dedicated was the most I cried throughout the whole year 2023. So like yeah, you will sometimes like be so disheartened and start crying, but you just cry and move on. Like sometimes take that evening off or you feel like you're not mentally like ready to like review stuff or go through stuff. Just take the evening on and like deal with your personal mental health, then continue. The goal is not to give up. The slow and steady wins the race. So like just make sure like you're making the progress daily. However, if you do need to take some time for yourself for whatever reason, do take that time too.
Thank you all. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for anyone who has questions to ask now.
You can also drop the questions in the chat if you don't, want to speak up.
Stacy, do you have something to say?
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the camera and mic, but it's acting up. Thank you so much for you guys' perspectives. I just had a question, and more so pertaining to retainment, like the material and all that stuff, it kind of makes sense. But if someone could talk to you, like, I know there's Anki, of course, but like I think I agree myself, like doing all the cards for my block is fine, but I'm not learning 30,000 cards for a step exam, especially when it's pass fail. And even some days I don't even want to do it. So I mean, I guess maybe a two-parter for the Anki and the non-Anki people in terms of what you do for the retainment of material during the dedicated period. Obviously, we learn a lot of things, and it does stick, especially when you're doing practice questions. Like the ones you get wrong are the ones that especially stick. But making sure that you retain the future information or the new information that you're getting, and the ones maybe you knew for sure and didn't go back to, because I find that's going to probably be the most difficult task for me, because like there's just so much information.
It seems like mommy raised her hand. Did you want to answer?
No, this is very personal. I like it touched my head, so I want to talk about it. I think that so I was not an Anki person during school, because like you said, there's just so many cards and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So during school, I would like make like 1-page notes of like the whole block, and then that would be like my review. But during dedicated, when I first started, I was like, I'm gonna take notes as I go, and I realized that it was not working. Like I would not go back to those notes, and I was wasting my time. What I will say though is Anki is still a super great resource, and how you can still use Anki and not like be that is I created a dedicated Anki that was just for like all the questions that I got wrong. And so like I've had an Anki card of just like all my UWorld mistakes. And because it's like a personalized Anki deck, it's not like 1,000 cards. And it was easy for me to go through like every single morning. And so like that way I was closing like up all the gaps that I have. And another thing too is like as you do questions, you'll meet concepts over and over again, right? And so like you did a question once, you got it wrong. Next week you do another 40 block. Like it's still like inbuilt review, because you're going to see the question that you got wrong that you reviewed again, like in another setting. And if you get it wrong again, then it's like, oh yeah, this definitely needs to. But I think Anki is still great. Like even if you're not an Anki person, like during dedicated, you can make like your own personalized like Anki that is like good for you. Other than that, you'd have to, I don't know, but I think other than that, you have to go back to like rereading stuff, which I don't think it's like the most effective use of your time, because Anki literally asks you questions and it's like a much better way to review.
And I agree with Mame. I use Anki heavily past school now, so it's kind of uncharted territory. But I think I was talking to some of the first years in my class, and I was telling them, if Anki's not a thing, that is totally fine. There's Quizlet. If Quizlet's not a thing, what I would do is, if you still want to kind of dabble Anki, what I would do is like when you go through UWorld, I think somebody already mentioned it. There's an add-on that allows you to pull specific Anki questions from the questions you get wrong. Okay, so to keep the card load very down or low, you can use that add-on, or you can literally type the question ID in the browse feature, and I think it'll pull the cards up. So that's a way to kind of avoid going to 30,000 cards. So I would say if you want to try it a little bit, you can definitely use that feature. If not, then a lot of questions to kind of keep up with that active recall. So those are the things I would say.
Apart from Anki, one thing I started doing mid-studies was that UWorld has the notes section. And what I would do is that if there were images or so in a question, or if there's something that I didn't know, or there's a table there, I will just copy and paste it in the notes section. So over like after studying throughout the whole day, while I was at night or so, while I was watching TV, I'll quickly scroll over and reread some of the information I just learned that day, or I've learned like in the past. I think personally helped me retain a lot of information that I would have otherwise not retained. So if you find any pertinent information in an explanation, answer explanation, you can just copy and paste it. Don't overdo it, because you don't want to copy the whole explanation. Like if you copy everything, then you won't review it. But maybe a line or two, a word or two to remind you of what you went through. Also on UWorld, you can search up questions, certain types of like information. So especially like approaching my exam when I completed most of UWorld, I knew that I'm going to go back and redo it. I'll just type in a term. Sometimes I was like and I'll type it up and all the questions will appear for that term, maybe 1,000 questions. Mind out, I wouldn't go over 1,000 questions, but what I would do is that I was sorted based on maybe the one with like the lowest percentage or highest percentage, from highest to lowest percentage or lowest to highest percentage, and just start going through those questions. And I think that helped me like review information I hadn't seen in a really long time and like see if my fresh pair of eyes too.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up to your comment, Stephanie, because I do use like my UWorld a lot during this time before dedicated, but then I like the notebook feature, but I don't really know how to maximize its like use. So could you talk a little bit about how you organize? Like I know you said you added stuff to the notebook. Did you have any specific type of organization for it that was helpful, or did you just kind of throw things into the notebook as they came in? Or
so initially my goal was to like have a notebook for like each system or section, but then I realized that was a bit overwhelming for me. And because it was midway through my whole study, my dedicated time, I relatively started like throw stuff in, but mind you, by then too, I was doing things based on systems. So you may see for maybe 2-3 pages, you may see only microbiome. Then like maybe afterwards, may see a few immunology questions, or you may see some GI cardio questions. So it was relatively organized, but it was also like quite chaotic too. So.
awesome, thank you all.
Another thing I would like to add is a lot of people stick to Anki. There's also other decks that are pulled out of Anki that are very specific to step 1, step 2. I think for step 1, this cheesy Dorian, and that's also it's like really spot on, and it's very few cards. So you can also look into that if you don't want to do a lot of flashcards.
And also, one thing that I'll add is that so like when you go into Anki and you put in step 1 or you go under step 1, it encompasses every card from every resource. So like Boss and Beyond, Patoma, Online Mat, whatever the case is, like every resource ever to talk about step 1, it compiles everything. So like technically, you don't have to do that. You can just focus on just one resource, like let's say Boss and Beyond, and do the cards for Boss and Beyond after you watch the video, or Patoma, and just do the cards for Patoma. So like when you open Anki on your laptop, you see like there's the browse on top. When you click on the browse, there's a lot of tabs on the left side of like the browse section that opens up. And when you scroll down, there are tags for everything. Like there are tags for Boss and Beyond, there are tags for everything, like every resource that we use, first aid. So like basically you can focus your Anki cards to those specific resources. So all you have to do is just suspend every card, which means that you don't want to see the cards when you open Anki. So you suspend all of that, then you just unsuspend the things that you need from the browse section. I think that's the best way to do Anki. I feel like a lot of people just go into step 1 and just click on step 1 and unlock everything. That's the worst way to do Anki. Anki wasn't built for that, because I've been using Anki since undergrad. And Anki, when I started using Anki, there are ways you can maximize how you use Anki without overwhelming yourself. And I think most people that use Anki don't know the algorithm behind Anki in a sense. So like there's ways that you can cut down the work. That I think somebody mentioned 32,000 cards. It is true for step 1. It is true, 32 cards of every resource I ever talked about, step 1 resources or step 1 studying. But you can cut that down to maybe Boss and Beyond, to Patoma, to Online Mat, to first aid, whatever resource you're focused on. So it's and this could actually be a whole lecture on itself, because like I've spent a lot of time using Anki and I've figured out the algorithm very well. So there are ways that you can even change how much time you see a card, a new card, or like an old card. Like, there are so many ways you can, figure that out. But, just so you guys can know, you guys need to cut down that 32,000 cards into like maybe 5,000 cards. And that sounds doable, right? Because you're breaking it down based on which videos you have watched. So then you can, it's more digestible in that sense, rather than seeing 32 cards for step one and you be like, I'm not gonna do that, which is true. You shouldn't do that because technically it's every resource. So there's ways around it. And I wish I can teach you guys all of that, but it's gonna take some time. But just know that there are videos on even on YouTube that talk about that and like how you can pick specific tags when you go under the browse and then unlock those cards for those specific videos, whether it's Boys and Beyond, Patoma, Sketchy, whatever the case is. There's things for all of that.
Oh, sorry. Another thing I would like to say is don't miss too many days, because let's say if you study a lot of cards and you miss a lot of days, the cards pile up and that can be overwhelming. Also, Sheila was asking about flashcards in, I believe, UWorld. I don't know if you got your answer because I saw some people replying, but I don't know if you got your answer. So if anyone wants to help with that, that would be great.
Personally, I didn't use flashcards in UWorld just because I felt like Anki was there, and with Anki could just look up the question the tags for the questions and just put it in to like review those questions you had just done. So I didn't feel as though like it was, I think Anki was a better resource to use than like going through the flashcards because of like the way Anki is spaced out and how you're able to see cards multiple times until you've relatively mastered it. But I personally didn't use the flashcard portion of UWorld.
So Mommy was asking if how long would you recommend studying for if you don't have a dedicated study period, if anyone can comment on that.
I would say it depends because I feel like the only person that knows where you are is you, right? Like you know where you're deficient at, like the type of questions you're getting wrong and what type of, blocks you didn't do well in. So like if, for instance, for my case, I know micro was the death of me and I needed to start that very fast. So like, and I'm pretty sure it's different for everybody. Some people it's cardio, some people it's palm, some others repro, whatever the case is. So you need to figure out the things that you are highly deficient in, and then create time to make sure you're going through everything for those blocks. Because until you address those, your score is not going to significantly go up, right? So like you need to address the things that you have highly deficient in. If it's repro, if it's cardio, if it's palm, then you're like, okay, I need 3 weeks to actually review all of this, like very into details. Or maybe I don't need to do that much into details. Maybe I need to just brush through as much information from those blocks. So it's like there isn't like one time, like one frame of time that fits everybody, right? Because everyone is different. Everyone has their own strengths. Everyone has their own weaknesses. So like I feel like you know you best. You know what you're deficient in. You know things that you are very good at. Maybe you are very good at micro and you don't need to watch Sketchy. So like now you know that. So now, okay, I'm not good at GI. I'm not good at cardio. So now I need to spend 2-3 weeks on them. Maybe I'm not good in biochemistry. So like it depends, right? It depends on what exactly you are. Like there are some blocks that you can do it in like a week. You can review them in a week. And then there's some blocks that you can't do them in a week. You have to do them in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. And then there's some blocks you probably don't even need to review it because you probably like the question, you're doing questions on those blocks and you're getting like a 75% of them right. You don't need to review them, right? Like you don't need to go back and review like the lectures for those. So like it's variable, but depending on where you are, I think you should spend at least 1 month. At least 1 month, kind of like, because the reason why I say 1 month of dedicated is that it gives you enough time to go through as many questions as well. Because questions and a little bit review can push your score very up, like very fast. Because one thing that I think a lot of people don't know is the more questions you see, the more like, because of course, when I say doing questions, after you do the questions, after you do a 40 block, you need to review them. That includes doing questions, because I know maybe I'm just saying doing questions, but you need to diligently review them. Because if you're not doing that, then you haven't learned from the mistakes that you made before. You haven't learned from it. So you need to review it. If you are doing the questions and you're reviewing them diligently, honestly, you don't even need to do that much review, because technically the questions you are getting wrong should tell you where you're deficient in. And that should kind of like direct how much dedicated you need. That's why I suggest starting, everyone who's studying for step one should start doing questions very early. If you know your exams is in June or May, as of now, you should be doing questions right now, because not a lot of questions, maybe do 10 questions a day, which should take you what, 30 minutes, right? You do the 10 questions, or maybe even less. Then you do 10 questions, and then that will kind of like direct you, okay, this is what I'm lacking in. And the way I do it also is like maybe 3 days after, three days out of a week, I do like specific block questions. So like 10 questions of cardio, just cardio, 10 questions of GI, 10 questions of that. And then the other days of the week, I'm doing like a mix, like a randomized, like, questions from every block. Because, you need that extra layer of block specific questions to get the maximum, like, I guess, exposure to those blocks. Then that's how you know exactly where you're deficient in, right? Because maybe when you do only biochemistry, you get all the questions right. Then when you do cardio, you get most of it wrong. So now you know, okay, I need to spend time on cardio. So like I feel like that's starting to start to do questions earlier, and that will direct you on things that you need to review very diligently, or things that you need to maybe brush through, and that kind of like tell you how much time you need for a dedicated. If it's 1 month, but I think at least 1 month should be enough for you to review a couple of things, and also do enough questions to see every type of questioning that you could see on step one. I know that doesn't answer your question specifically, but because everyone is different. I guess that's how to put the answer. Everyone is different, and depending on how you study, your study strategies and stuff, it could look different for you. You could spend 1 month, you could spend 2 weeks, you could spend 3 weeks.
I'll briefly add, just quickly. So I would say if I was going back to studying, and I didn't have a dedicated, I'll probably first thing I'll do is take a diagnostic MBME, see where you're at, because that will tell how much you need. A 60% technically to pass the exam. My school recommends that you get at least 270 on your practice exams before you take the actual exam. So I would say probably start with a practice MBME. Once you get that done, see what percentage. It doesn't even matter if it's 20%. That is totally fine. That's where you're starting from. And I'll probably look at the systems you got most wrong and try to start reviewing on those. And as you're reviewing, I'll probably kind of buttress it with UO questions addressing those specific systems. And then I'll probably keep going with that type of method where you do your questions review, and then I'll probably say like maybe after 3 weeks or 2 weeks of that, I'll probably do another practice exam, see where your progress is. So the length of studying, I would say you have to play it by ear. Once you're getting closer to that 70% mark, I feel like then you can confidently say, I should be ready in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. Then I'll probably book an exam day. But I'll play by ear if you don't exactly know, or if you don't plan to take a dedicated. Practice exam to start, diagnostic, do questions, all right, see where you're deficient in, review, and keep going until you get closer to that 60% mark, and then book your exam day and probably finish off with like 2 weeks-ish. And the last few days before exam, or last week, I'll probably take I'll try to finish the MBMEs, or at least do 2 additional MBMEs to make sure you get that to 70%. Once you do that, I think you're ready to go.
I would say, if you're thinking about like when to start studying for your exam, start as soon as possible. I know we have this misconception that because STEP is like now pass fail is easier. The exam is still hard. It's still a hard exam. It's just not scored. So start as soon as possible. Personally, I felt I didn't start early enough. Prior to it going to pass fail, people started when they started medical school. Maybe you don't need to start right when you start medical school, but start early enough that you're able to adjust yourself and get used to kind of questions that UWorld asks, and like what kind of questions that you may often appear on the exam, because apart from like learning all this content, we've spoken about this multiple times, but strategy is really important. And knowing how to approach a question can make or break your score. So I would suggest that, yes, you're learning the content, you're learning the information, but also learn the way they ask questions throughout the ask questions and master that process. Learn and also learn a way to answer those questions, however you may answer, whether you're reading the answer choice from bottom to top. There are a lot of people who teach you how to answer these questions. There are a lot of resources like that. Look for ones that suits you and start as soon as possible. If you're not the first year of medical school, maybe like by the beginning of the second year of medical school, depending on your curriculum, but start as soon as possible and get used to that whole process. Use the first aid book as a supplemental material that during your preclinical years, review it as you go along. And yes, I know Bernard said this a few times, but even if you can do like 5-10 questions, do it and study those questions and review those questions. Put in the effort. I think that if you do the forward work, by the time you get to dedicated, things become easier and you'll be more ready to take the exam, because dependent, like, dedicated differs from many schools, but it's not that much time to like learn all that in a short amount of time.
I agree.
Really
Oh,
helpful.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying thank you. That was really helpful.
Sorry, I was gonna say dedicated is not that much time, and a lot of schools actually still have something planned for that time. So start early. For my school, they had one of the professors come talk to us halfway through, so probably around December, about getting ready, having a plan, how many questions you have for each QBank that you have. So for us, we have 2 different QBanks. So calculate the amount of questions that each QBank has, divided by the amount of time that you have, and figure out how many questions you do each day. So with that in mind, let's say if you divide it by the time you're starting and you're doing 20 questions, then that means by this end goal, I'll have this finished before my dedicated, and then I can use dedicated to kind of sift through the things that I'm not that great at. So just knowing what your plan, I think someone already said this, your goals, having a goal for when am I supposed to get this ready, having what resources in mind, because just knowing what resources you're going to use is not enough. You have to know how much time you're going to spend on each. Like Boards and Beyond is a lot of time. Each video is about 30 to 45 minutes. So you have to plan accordingly. For our school, we had like a SIFs, which is the people that run all the academics. They had these PDFs that had each video, how much time, so you can print it out and just like mark it so that you know and you can track what to do. So for me personally, I started it based on what content is the most on the test. So if it's cardio, I'm doing cardio first. And then I can work on my weaknesses, because I wanted to focus on high yield and then my weaknesses and then whatever stuff if I have time. So if you don't have dedicated, maybe try to figure out how much time you have to do specific amount of questions. You know what your cap is. For me, probably 20 questions is my cap for the day. And then I can move on to other stuff, because you're not just doing questions. Sometimes you might be reviewing something. If you have school related stuff, you might be doing that. Or if you have research something. So just knowing what your plan is very important. I believe Nana, sorry if I butcher your name, Koranchi Boardu has raised a hand. So let's see what they want to say.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to comment on a little bit of what I did as well. So what I did pretty much was our school, we have like the block system. So whatever block that we're doing, I was making sure that I would be able to finish all the UWorld questions pertaining to that block. And so when it was time for me to study for like step 1, I had already gone through all the UWorld questions for the first time. And it was because I figured that while I was doing the questions, I was studying for school and at the same time studying for step 1. And so by the time that I got to dedicated time, I was able to, I didn't have to stress that much because I had already done first pass of all the UWorld questions. So the second time was pretty easy. And I think we do write CBSE at the end of like your second year. And if you don't pass, you don't get to write the exam. And so that also was very helpful for me to be able to prep for step one.
So we have approximately 8 minutes left. So if you have any questions, this is your time to ask now. Okay, well, I'm gonna ask one question and then I guess we can wrap around it. So one thing I had mentioned earlier is that some people are involved in research, volunteering. For us, we're not pass fail, so we still have the grading system. So you have to do well in your academics as well. So studying for boards, how do you sort of try to manage that, you know, all these extracurricular activities that you're trying to do to be competitive for residency, whereas also studying for your boards? How do you do that?
I can answer this because I was doing like a lot of research during that time. There's not like an easy answer to this. So let me put it this way. It's just unfortunate that for some curriculums you have to do this two things simultaneously at the same time: research, studying for step one, and studying for your local exams. So okay, these three things actually. So it's unfortunate that some curriculums are set up that way, and I'm pretty sure it's not every school that has it that way. But specifically for our school, you have to do all those things during dedicated. And the way that I approached it is, I start my days very early. And I know, some people might not be morning people and they usually like to, not wake up very early because, sometimes they have their classes on Zoom or like it's recorded and you don't have to go to class and all that. So I feel like one way that you can maximize how much time you have to do all those things is wake up early as possible, and also try to break up your studying in like maybe 1 hour blocks or researching 1 hour blocks, right? So like I say, you study for 1 hour, you take a break, maybe 10 minutes break, and then you move on to the next hour. And maybe you do that for 4 hours for like just studying, and then you switch gears to maybe research or whatever you have to do. Maybe you have some data collection to do for a project. Maybe you have volunteering, because I think that's a big part too. Because you have to do extracurriculars, or maybe you run a club, whatever the case is, right? So the way I did it was break up my day in 1 hour chunks with maybe 10 minutes break in between those chunks. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot of time. It is actually helpful to know that, okay, in this 1 hour, this is the goal that I've made for myself. And this is how I'm going to achieve it. Let's say in 1 hour, you want to watch 2 Boss and Beyond videos. And the only reason why I'm saying that is I watch my videos on 2 times speed. I know a lot of people probably don't do that, but it kind of like cuts how much time you spend on one video. Like say you have a 40 minutes video and you're watching it on 2 times speed. Now that's 20 minutes. So like in a 1 hour block of studying, you can get 2 videos done. Even sometimes 2.5 videos. So like try to, you still have to go to bed. You still have to do, if you have a call that you have to make with your parents or whatever, people that matter to you, you still have to do all those things. But try and break up your day in smaller chunks and make sure that the goals that you set for yourself during that smaller chunks, you're getting them done. You have to hold yourself accountable, right? So like, if you know that, okay, I tried this the past week and it's not working, or like I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to do in this 1 hour chunks, then you have to kind of like figure out another way of maybe it's you going through your phone while you're studying, right? So maybe I know there's some apps that you can use to lock your phone for 1 hour or whatever the case is, or you can put your phone in your bedroom and then study for 1 hour or do research for 1 hour, or extracurriculars. Maybe you have to volunteer for 2 hours, right? So like, you have to figure out a way to maximize the time that you have. And sometimes it's not enough time. It's not enough time. And sometimes there are days that you probably have to go a couple of, maybe you have to sleep a little bit later. Maybe you usually go to bed at 9 or whatever, 10 p.m. Maybe you have to go to bed at 11 p.m. one day. I don't think that's the end of the world, but as long as you're not doing it every day and you are very strict with like your schedule a little bit, I think it should be doable, but there are gonna be some times that you need to sacrifice a little bit, a little bit of comfort for you to achieve something. Maybe you need to finish some data collection, or maybe you need to volunteer. So you're gonna sacrifice maybe 1 hour or 2 hours of sleep. And I know you shouldn't be doing that every day, but try to. There are gonna be times that you have to compromise your schedule to maximize how much you're doing in a day. Waking up early, I find very helpful to kind of like, start your day early, get a lot of things done. And I know maybe some people have class, are in curriculums that they have to go to class in the mornings. Well, I don't know how that works, but because I haven't had that, but I guess if that's the case for you, then you try to maximize those time and make sure you're not coming back and watching the lectures that you just went to. So like, it sounds like, things that you should be doing already, but it's things that something sit in a lecture and you just blank out for like 30 minutes. And the next thing you know, you have to come back and watch those videos again at home. Now you've spent a lot of time that you shouldn't be spending, right? So I know it's just small things, 1 hour chunks, a little break in between, 1 hour chunks, a little bit break in between, and try to maximize your day that way. Hopefully, I hope that answers the question, but
I agree with Bernard. Like, create a schedule that you choose to stick to, which requires a lot of discipline. Compartmentalize what you're doing. If you're doing research one day, like for a certain amount of time, then focus on that. If you're studying for a step, then focus on that. If you're studying for your local exams, then focus on that. As you get closer to your exam, you can prioritize your exam as you move forward, but just make sure like you have a system that works for you, that you have continuously built and that works for you. Life is never easy. There's always going to be something coming up. So you have to do multiple stuff. You have to multitask a lot, especially in healthcare overall.
Kwaku Obing raised his hand.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity or chance to be here. Okay, so I have a few questions, and I think some of them have been talked about already, but I didn't really get to, so I would like them to be reiterated. So the first one is, do med school grades matter? So my school runs a pass-fail system, and I don't know if like maybe later in the future applying for residency, they would look back on your med school grades and think a particular way of you. And the second thing is, can you do USMLE without Anki, like at all, without Anki? And the third thing is, Michael talked about a Google Drive link which has BNB, Patoma videos, etc. Can he please share that? And also the last thing is can you guys please share the WhatsApp group for sorry, the WhatsApp group for GPSF? Thank you very much.
I've honestly forgot the first question because I was about to answer that, but in the second,
Yes, sorry. So the first question is, do med school grades matter? And the second question is, can you do USMLE without Anki?
yes, you can actually do USMLE without Anki, but you need to have a better way of reviewing the things that you're getting wrong. The only convenience of like Anki is the fact that if, like you say, you're doing UWorld, you can transfer the wrong questions that you got right into Anki straight up. Like there's like an add-on that you can use. So I guess that's the only luxury that comes with that. But if you don't want to use Anki, then you have to figure out a way of how you're going to review your questions basically for the next 2 or 3 weeks of your dedicated without forgetting those information. So yes, you can do it without it. You just have to figure out a system that works for you to remember that. And then also you asked about school grades. So I haven't gone through the match process at all, but speaking to people that went through the match process recently and they went through interviews, one thing that they mentioned is that since not every school has grades for their preclinical years, they can use that to standardize applicants. Because a lot of schools are pass or fail, right? And if your school is still graded, maybe it would affect your ranking in your class, right? But they can't necessarily use that because not every school has that. So they can't necessarily use that to rank you when they are going head on head with applicants that have a pass or fail curriculum and you have a graded curriculum. They can compare you to that applicant that way because it's not fair to you. Because some applicants have pass or fail and you have a graded system in your school. So I haven't gone through the match process like I said, but from what I'm hearing, it doesn't really count as much. But the things that do count though is just step 2 now, apparently. Because at least that is standardized across all, well, because now step 1 is pass or fail, right? So if you pass, it doesn't matter what your score was, everyone passed. But step 2, since it's still scored, it's still a good way to kind of like compare or kind of like put applicants or kind of like screen applicants in a sense. But like grading for schoolwork, since every school doesn't have that, it will be very hard to use that. Because let's say you're graded and a bunch of applicants don't pass or fail. It wouldn't be fair for you for them to use your graded exams during your preclinical years towards somebody who is pass or fail. So even if it's still important, you still can't fail or whatever the case is, but it's I guess if it gives you any I guess decrease your stress a little bit, since everyone doesn't have it, it makes it a little bit easier not for them to compare you based off that. I hope that answers your.
Sorry, yes, please answers my question. Thank you very much.
Quickly to add on quickly, what Bernard said is true. However, the only thing I would be concerned about a bit is like your class ranking overall, depending on your grades, the rank. Like if your school has an internal ranking system, then they may appear in like your dean's letter or so. So maybe that's where you would worry about how your grades may affect some parts of your application in the future.
I can answer parts of it. So if you're pass or fail, just like he said, you probably might not have to worry that much about it. But people who do have grade system, you need to be very worried about that because they can see your grade. So I've had interviews where they would ask you, why did you make this score, blah, blah, blah. So if you do have a score ranking system, you probably should pay more attention to that too, because they can see it and they can use that. Sorry, and
few questions. Sorry, I was gonna say your last few questions. The drive is in the chat. If you saw it, I think Sheila sent a mega drive that has like everything. If your school already doesn't have one like floating around, so it should be in the chat if you scroll up. And I think they're gonna put the WhatsApp in the group chat in the chat as well. And like they all said, I think even if your school doesn't have a pass-fail system, please find out what actually goes in your MSPE letter, because you would be surprised of things you're not aware of that goes in there. So like talk to people in your school and find out like what goes in there. I know for certain schools, like even if you like failed a test but remediated it and passed it and it says pass on your transcript, it still goes in your MSPE letter. So like make sure you know what goes in there. And also depending on what your school does, I know that for my school, studying for your exam is equated to studying for stuff, because our school doesn't do like asking you PhD stuff. We do NBME questions, style questions. And so like it's to your own benefit to do well in your test because you're actually just studying for stuff. So depending on what your school does, I think that's med school so personalized that like study to what fits your school system. I also wanted to add for last thing, hop off, is I know it can be, I remember, listening to someone tell me like some of these stuff a little over like 8 weeks ago, and I was about like ending my second year, and it seemed like a lot. Like there's somebody who was, I think it was Nana, who had like literally done all of UWorld. There were people like that, and I had not done all of UWorld. Like by the time I was studying dedicated, I'd only done like 30%. I was like, wow, I am in so much trouble. But you can do it, okay? Like I took stuff without even like finishing UWorld, and I'm not saying like that's the best thing to do, but I'm saying you're like more than capable to like do well. And much of STEP is a mental battle, and if you win the battle in your head and you like convince yourself that you can do it, then you can do it. But if you're already going into the exam defeated, like you're gonna have a more of an uphill battle. So like believe in what you've done. Like every single time that you've been in med school, you've spent 2 years studying for it, so you're like more than ready to take this test. You're more than able to do this test. It's not something that you can't not do. Majority of people pass STEP. Like majority of medical students are going to pass STEP, and you're not going to be like that one person that's going to be a deception if you put in the work. So don't worry about it. And lastly, too, about like research and stuff, please define your goals. Don't do things blindly because everyone is doing it. Don't like pick up a bunch of like research projects because, people have 30 publications and 60 and I need to get them too. Define your goals of why you're doing it. You're not, there's so much time to do a lot of things in medical school. You don't have to get everything done by like the time you take step 1. You must have 3 publications or 4 publications. Like there's still a lot of time. You're going to publish case reports. You're going to go into your clerkships. You're going to do like stuff. So don't be so much in a hurry that you're sacrificing like what you're supposed to be doing now. Like you're struggling on STEP because you're spending so much time trying to publish. Like it will all come together. Y'all gonna do great. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Cool. We will get you the link. If you can just send your contact or email, I will get you the link into the chat. So that marks the end of our session today. I hope y'all learned a lot. I actually